This is my neighbour's backyard after a small amount of rain. I live on what's called a battle axe property. I have a neighbour in front of me and a long driveway to my house. In my 7 years of living here, after every rain, whether it's a small little shower or a large deluge of rain, my neighbour's yard fills with water and it remains as a pond or a dam for weeks before it slowly leaks away into the ground. It obviously limits the ability to use the backyard, and he's got small kids which would love to use the grass. Now, this has obviously impacted his backyard, but I think it's been damaging my house as well. So the water has been hitting the sandstone that we're built on and works its way through the sandstone fissures and is going and attacking the foundations of my house, causing some water damage. So last year, my neighbour came to me and discussed the matter. He'd gotten the water diagrams and there was nothing to be seen. So he hired some plumbers to come and dig up his backyard, and they dug it up and they found a pit over on the far side and found a PVC pipe acting as an easement running across to the other side of his yard. They put an inspection port in and were able to flush a heap of black organic matter that's been blocking the pipe for years out. But they said the easement disappeared into my house. So they marked out approximately where it was on the ground, and that's sort of where we left it. They said there is a problem on my side of the fence. So the neighbour and I consulted the build documentation that the council had when my house was constructed, and there was a little marking on the map. So was that an easement? Did it actually run underneath my driveway? If you can see, it's about a 12-metre run between a pit on my side, which is near that orange tarp, and all the way back to the fence. So that's a lot of concrete to dig up and replace, should that be where the problem is. So I bought a water jet extension thing for my pressure cleaner and tried ramming it up the pipe from my pit end. Barely anything came out. There were a few pieces of rock which looked like construction fill type stuff, but nothing that would really make sense. I was hoping that the problem was just going to be a simple pipe that had come apart. So a standard pipe has they slip into one another, and usually you use a sealant to glue them together so they don't come apart, but I was hoping that they hadn't done that and it had just come apart underground. So in the hopes of it being a simple solution, I just started digging and digging and digging. So I was digging in soil which was filled with big rocks and tree roots, so every time you hit the shovel into the ground, it just didn't go anywhere. It was a horrid piece of a task to do. So after a couple of days, I was 1.5 metres down and hitting bedrock, and I couldn't find the pipe at all. So I was about to give up when eventually I saw a little flash of white down in amongst the dirt down the bottom, and there it was. So this pipe appeared, not quite in where they said it would, but anyway. So whilst the pipe was all twisted up and bent, and I was feeling a little bit sorry for myself, the reality was I was like, oh, well, it's not too bad. I cut the bad section out of the middle, maybe some rubber flex piping just to connect the two halves, and shouldn't be too bad. And then I kept digging it out, and I noticed that the pipe was bigger than I expected, much bigger. I was expecting a 90mm pipe, but this was 150mm, so a really big pipe. And so on Christmas Eve, with guests over, I decided it'd be good as time as any to drill a hole in the pipe to relieve any built-up pressure. And you can't describe the smell of the black water that came out of the damn thing. So I was actually standing in the middle of it when I did drill it open, and my nephew was quite surprised that I was so calm, considering I got covered in black filth before getting out and filming the rest of it. So after allowing the water to wick away through the sandstone bedrock, I drilled a few more holes to give myself some room to move, and tried jamming a hose in. I figured, all right, well, there must be some blockage somewhere. And you can see some tadpoles there as well. So that black goo was full of frog spawn. And anyway, I tried to jam a hose through it and it just wouldn't go. I tried smashing a big stick through it, nothing would work. So something major was up. I figured that I could just leave the holes at the top there for a while and buy myself some time, but wasn't to be the case. So the pipe was all squashed, so that just meant more digging. So it was really quite a job. There wasn't a lot of room to move. You can't swing a pickaxe in there. It's tiny when you're down that low, and as you can see, the pipe was just so squashed. And my father was talking about cutting open the whole of the driveway, and I just didn't want that. I really wanted as little impact as possible. So I cut the pipe open, and I jammed a football in one half of it, just into the upstream pipe, and this way it gave me a bit of a better idea as to which way the pipe went and what the problem was. And the problem was it was just bent and bent and bent. So it went one way, it went another way, and so I just had to keep digging and digging to try and work out how far the problem extended to, so that I knew how far to cut the driveway to. And I could see that it started getting a bit rounder after the main 90-degree bend. It got a little bit rounder, so I was a little bit hopeful. So I built some tunnelling devices just so I could reach in, stab the rock and the sandstone and drag it out again. I don't have any footage of that, but long story short is I tunnelled out as much as I could so that I could work out exactly the point in the driveway to start drilling, because unfortunately that's what it was going to take. It was going to be cut open the driveway. So out comes the core drill, just a cheap Chinese one. So it was a little, it's not as good as a professional one, but look, it got through it. The slugs were 18 centimetres deep, so the driveway was reinforced concrete 18 centimetres deep, or 7 inches. It was pretty bloody hefty when 10 centimetres of concrete would have done the job. So it was nearly twice as thick as it needed to be. So drilling hole after hole just to try and work out where the pipe was, and to give us an operating window. A little bit of tidying up with a angle grinder as well, with a diamond blade tip on it, and before long we had an access port and could see exactly what we were dealing with, and it was pretty much right on the money as to what we needed to work with in order to fix the issue. It was a good opportunity to also see what the actual problem was. Like, I knew it was a squashed pipe, but I didn't know how bad it was, and it was bad. It was a 90-degree turn. There's no way anything could flow through it, and also explained why I couldn't get a skinny little water jet to go up it. I was, in my digging, I was thinking, what is this? Is this has it been squashed by an excavator when they built the property? Because you can't by hand bend this stuff. It is so thick, so strong. So it must have either been an idiot or someone being malicious, or someone just covering up a problem. I had to cut the pipe off. It had to come out anyway, but it gives you a good visual of just how squished it was, and that's one of the better points, because that's where I chose to cut it off. That pipe has to be replaced, but we also need to be able to get an end on that pipe. It looks like like an upside down snowman. So that's not going to translate into getting a connection on the end of it. So where to from here? Well, let's get that old pipe out and try and work out what we can do to salvage what's already in the ground, because I don't want to dig up the driveway. I don't want to replace the full length of piping. You can see the pipe against a proper 150mm. It's crazy how different it was. I shoved a football into the upstream pipe, as you can see there, and inflated it. I put the needle through the hole that I drilled and inflated it. So that did two things. It stopped the water running into this work area, and it also was trying to bend the distorted pipe back into shape. That was one of the things here. We've got a bit of a straight shot between the pipes now. Well, we've got a couple of bends that we've got to work out, but we've got to get these ends round so that we can put ends on them. And that's what we're doing here. We've made a couple of jigs, so the heat gun should melt or at least soften the plastic of the pipe, the PVC of the pipe, and then we can clamp down on these. So these have been turned up to 160 millimeters, which is the outer diameter of the DWV piping. And so yeah, we heat it up, clamp it down, and hopefully get it somewhat round. It's come out pretty good there. So now it's time to go on the live one. We've only got really one shot at doing this as well, because if we muck up, we've got to cut the end off and go again, and we just don't have any room to do that. So if it's a muck up, it means cutting away more of the driveway, which I really don't want to do. My wife was already upset enough about this happening. Actually, this was done without her knowledge. She didn't know until she came home that we'd drilled the driveway. Alright, so heat gun in, soften that PVC, clamp down, and hopefully make it round. And as you can see, it's sort of well, it was working. So I just started at the back and just kept bringing it down till the wooden jigs were snug, and yeah, just moved it along, and eventually the pipe came pretty round. It's good enough that we could get an end on it. So we'd worked out what angles we needed. We couldn't actually get an angle meter in the area, it was too small, but I was able to use an app that I found online and work out what the angles were that were required. Unfortunately, Bunnings, the biggest hardware chain in Australia, didn't have the bits that we needed in that size, because 150mm is quite large. It's not a consumer size product, so I had to go to Reese Plumbing, which was a lesson in pain for the wallet. So but anyway, they had the bits and was able to get it done that day. So all of this happened so fast. It was usually, you try and think about these things, map it out, but it was just move at speed. There was rain predicted to be coming, so just get it done as quickly as possible. Once we'd had it sort of roughed up, it was time to chop the ends off, get the football out of there, which meant more backload of water, because it had been raining on and off the whole time. This only was over the course of a couple of days, a few days, a week or so, I don't know. But yeah, certainly there was no restriction anymore, so it was able to work as intended. And yeah, so that was good to see. And probably the most contentious part was my father, who is site foreman on this job. His insistence on using a rubber coupling. The reason being, it's just easier. There's probably 1 degree of bend still in it, and it's just a dirty area. Wherever we would sort of move, dirt would fall down, and so when you're using the sealants and glues, you get one shot at getting it right. Yes, we can mark it up with pencil. Yes, we could probably do it outside, but there's a lot to go wrong, and the fittings were so expensive. A regular 90mm fitting is like $6 for a bend like that, but that one there is $130, $136 I think it was, for that one bend. So yeah, it's just, you don't want to sort of get it wrong and then blow that sort of cash in one hit. There was no one else paying for this job, so it's not like we could just pass it on to the customer. Alright, so all the fittings were in. I didn't go to the neighbour and ask him to test it. I'd sort of had enough runs where I knew that it was working, and there was rain on the way, so that'd be a good enough test before I filled in the holes, and we bury this, which is always seems a bit sad as well. I don't want it to go wrong, and I don't want to have to dig it up. But anyway, there we go. I filled it all up with sand, then filled it with dirt, and then planted a nice little lemon tree on top. So hopefully it bears fruit, and will remind me of the time that some major works were done there. Here's a rainy day, and what I didn't realise when speaking to the neighbour later, this is also all the catchment from his house roof. So all his water was actually feeding that one pit. So his backyard was filling up not just with the water from the backyard catchment, and it was a big backyard, but also his roof as well. So it was flowing through, following the pipes through, and then it goes out the back, and there we go. It's hitting the bush and hits a waterway that, when the person built this house, he had to build a river as part of the approval process, which he did. But yeah, I guess it hasn't been flowing much because it hasn't had the full stream of water. But anyway, you can see it now. Now I've got a nice little waterfall when it rains, so that's cute. Yeah, it's funny seeing those white pipes into the nature like that. Maybe I could throw some leaf matter over the top of that just to make it look a little bit more becoming of the area. But yeah, it certainly works, and the neighbour's backyard is not filling up with water either, which is a really, really good thing, and hopefully that means that I get the benefit as well. So I do think that there was some water that was my water problems were in some ways based on the water that his property was sending into the sandstone layer, and then which would then come out because my house is built lower than his. So yeah, but now we've got a hole, and we need to fill the hole, and we've got a coloured driveway. So bought some oxide and started making up sample patches in the sort of looks about right, but this is called bluestone colour, but when it's wet it doesn't look anything like the driveway. The driveway was brown, I think, at one point, but originally it was brown, and it's just sort of weathered, so it looks grey, it looks slightly brown. So then I went and got some black, just because I wanted it to pop in. When it rained, I didn't want it to have a stupid light grey square, so I tried in different ratios of black and the bluestone colour, and that's a 50-50 mix, which when sprayed with a hose looked fairly good. It's the closest to the existing one, and so I thought, oh, that's the one I'll have to go with. And in the end, though, I really went, no, I need some brown in there. It's just not quite right. And so, as it's been throughout the course of this build, trying to do things as cheaply as possible, borrowed some brown oxide off somebody, and started mixing up. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have any guides. I just thought, you know what, I'll just do a third of each and see what that comes out like. And look, the result was pretty good. It was a tricky one in that I didn't really have enough time to let the end product actually settle. I'd let the others sort of dry out, but I did this, and then I think the next day I actually poured the concrete. So I had a bit of a good feeling of it when I saw the colour that it was when it was wet, and you can see here when I put it down onto the plate and smooth it out with the brown colour, which will go some way towards representing what it looks like when it's wet. Sort of came out a bit, pretty much like the driveway was. And here's a shot from today of what that looks like in the shadows and in the full sun. Looks pretty good. So, alright, so just getting ready, prepping the area to pour some cement, and that just involved cleaning up the edges, making sure that it didn't look like all scalloped and so forth. So interesting. Oh, I guess it shouldn't be interesting, but the core drill must be 4-inch, because the 4-inch diamond blade on the angle grinder formed the exact same contoured profile for the corner. so that was handy. But yeah, it was just a case of tidying up. Didn't take that long, but should hopefully make the job look a little bit neater. Only went down about an inch or so, just to make sure that it had a smooth mating surface. Not that concrete cares. So yeah, just taking advantage of some timings, and I thought let's fill this hole. So unfortunately, this sort of happened earlier than I was expecting. I didn't get a chance to see how the long-term colouring went with the samples that I'd done, but I had a good gut feel from how they'd been progressing over the day and a half that I'd seen. So in go the oxides, blue, brown, black in equal proportions, and yeah, then it was a concrete load by hand. It's been a while since I've done it out of the wheelbarrow. I've gotten used to the cement mixer, so anyway, that was just it was good to get the workout. And yeah, I was a little bit nervous there about the colour. Had I not done enough brown, I had grand visions of putting rebar across like that, but in the end it turned out to be I just shoved a bunch of starter bars in because I couldn't get the drill in far enough. It was too long for the holes. So anyway, you can see that brown colour sort of starting to evolve there with a bit of time. So yeah, in it goes, just little trowel loads. And it is on a hill. It doesn't look like it there, but it's actually quite steep, and it's steep in a couple of planes. So, and you know, you got this big jelly load, and as you'll see, it sort of heaves and moves about as the trail goes over it. So, you know, I didn't want it to be a rise. I didn't want it to be a divot, but sometimes I think you just got to get what you get. Yeah, this is sort of the last little bit at night. Of course, it rained overnight and it got a little bit damaged. It had to be a bit textured, so the wood float just gave a little bit of texture at the end. The next day, it looked quite brown. The surrounding areas a lot paler just because of the concrete dust that the core drill generated. So that should all sort of, you know, go back to a better state. A day later, in the full sun, looking pretty good. In the shade, looking good. And then this is today. This is just 2 days. Actually, what was that? That was after 1 day. Sorry, 1 day and a wet down just to see what it looks like, and looking pretty good, if I do say so. In regards to how that colour looks when it's wet and dry, so I'm hoping it maintains that level of colour match. But I mean, it's really early days. I shouldn't be getting too excited by anything at this point, because it's still got to get a layer of algae to grow over the top of it just to match the rest of the area. And then this is today in some scattered light. You know, where is it? It's there. It's looking pretty good. But yeah, as I say, there's only 2 days. It should get even lighter. And just to close this out, I got a text message from him after some rain saying it's the first time in 10 years that he's been there that his backyard hasn't flooded. So that's a pretty good result. As for who has responsibility to get this fixed and paid for, etc., look, I don't know where the responsibility lies, and I don't really care. I've got the ability to fix it myself, so it's easier just to do it and be a good neighbour rather than having a fight about money.